going to be about me coding a random abstract art picture using HTML and JavaScript. So, this will be part one of a multi-part series, where the first part I code the whole generator, abstract image generator from scratch all the way to a finished generator. So, part one, here we go. From scratch. Let's begin coding, shall we? Okay, so this is similar to a multi-part series here. I've coded a Mandelbrot set back in the last parts, the last videos, but this one will be a new one. So here we go. So I have boilerplate HTML, an empty style sheet, I already have settings, and an empty JavaScript. So let's start with the HTML. What should I add? Of course, I'm going to add a canvas. Just gonna add a main to organize something first. And let's have an ID attribute because we will access that. Call it random picture. And yeah. So what I'll do next is I'll have to link the style sheet and the JavaScript. So let's link the CSS. We'll have a link CSS, and href is style.css, which is what I named it, which is good now. I used autocomplete. So this line of code just links your external style sheet in the HTML. And I'll do a script here. I'm gonna create a script tag and link the source to a new JavaScript here, which is an empty one. And this is where I'll write the code, my JavaScript code, where all the magic happens. So let's begin coding it. And I'm going to first set the background to black in CSS, starting everything. HTML and body. I'm going to set it to black, so there it is. I have a black screen. Okay, so we've got the links done. Now let's code. Use strict mode. I'm going to make a setup function to set everything up. So to set things up. So add an event listener to the DOM content. Add an event listener to DOM content loaded, which means that once the DOM has been loaded into the web page, we call the function setup. So what I'll do in the setup is I will set a width and a height for canvas. Select this element and set the CSS ID that will give me a handle, a reference of the canvas. And I will now set a width. Set an attribute width and set it to, let's say, 1,000 pixels, because we want to see it. You guys as an audience would love to see a big picture of the canvas, not rather than a tiny image. Same thing for the height. Let's go to my CSS. And now this is my canvas. This is what I have right now. Whoops. And I should have I put the wrong CSS selector, which is what I didn't want. I put it here by accident, which I styled HTML on body, but I've added a CSS selector for canvas. As you can see, the canvas is kind of styled here. I can see it. And I'll just add a ridge instead. Set it to a ridge style, so it's gonna look more like a picture frame. Okay, so it looks better. It has the frame. And now what I'll then do is go start creating algorithms that draws random shapes and random shapes or something. So let's go. So what I'll now do is try to draw something. Let's do that. So I'm going to do context to get the context of the canvas, like where I get the drawing tools. Right now, what I am trying to do is to draw a line. No, not a line. Maybe draw a rectangle, a square, or something. So that's my goal. We start out small first. So what I'll do is fill rectangle, I think, or rect, which takes an input a position, x and y position, and a width and a height. So what this method is doing is, for the context, I'm going to create a rectangle that starts at, where the top left corner starts at 200 and 200 pixels y, 200x, 200y, and the second two parameters like this is the width and height respectively. And I'm going to set the style to white. I think So I've created one rectangle, one single rectangle, and now I am going to maybe create a method that just simply draws a rectangle. So what I'm now trying to create is a function, a simple function that creates one rectangle, a random rectangle that is positioned randomly with a random size. So let's try that. Right now, I am trying to create a random variable, a random number from 1 to 1,000, and I'm going to try to log that. So it gives you that 576. But to remove these decimals, I'm going to math.floor. And take an input, that. And in that way, it gives you a rounded down, truncated decimal value. Maybe I'll add 1 or something, because it's going to be from 1 to 999. Let's add it, +1. There you go. I'm just gonna add 1. And I'll do the same thing for y. Random y. It generates math.floor. Do the same thing from 0 to 999. And what I'll then do is I am going to also create 2 more random variables. Let's just do constants because I'm not planning to change this. And yeah, let's create 2 more constants. This one will be a random size x, and I want to generate a number from 1 to, let's say, 400. Random size y will be that. And here, what I'll then do is I am going to draw a rectangle. Alright, with this function. So what I'll do is get another handle of canvas and get the context as well on the top, so I can create it here. And what I'll then do is I will draw a rectangle, a 1 white rectangle from 200. From with a white rectangle outlined. It's a stroke, so it's outlined. And I'll do a random, and I'll call rectangle to create the rectangle. Pass in these constants. Random x, random y, random size x, random size y, and I'll stroke. So what I'll do is maybe log something so I will know that this is called let's do it here. Just gonna add some semicolons to make it more consistent, because I've been adding a lot of semicolons. And now I have created a random rectangle here. So this is my square that I originally created. Now I have created a rectangle over here that is randomly generated from this function here. So before I continue coding, let's clean up this code a bit. So what I'll then do is let's do a constant. A width and a height and I will not, instead of hard coding these, I'm going to use these. Even though this is a square for the canvas, the same width and same height, I'm going to create two different variables because you never know, I might change them. And I am going to declare variables for the canvas and the context. And like that. And now it still works because I made these variables global, so I don't have to declare it locally here. So now I've created another one, it works. And so now what I'll then do is add some comments. Random numbers for rectangle dimensions and as well, and what's that? Rectangle dimensions and position. Yeah. I'm going to name this position rand x position position x. Same thing for y. And this one, just to make it more consistent, just put rand here and rand here, like that. So, and now I've done some basic adding of one rectangle, but I keep adding one rectangle only, one thing at a time. So what I'll do is, let's try making 10 random rectangles. a loop from 1 to 10, or I'll create 10 random rectangles from 0 to 10, and I will call random rectangle inside the for loop, so I create 10 random rectangles. And here you go, look at that. This is what I want. 10 random rectangles. I'm gonna load it again. Here you go, look at that. This is pretty cool, right? So, what else can I do? What else can I do? I am going to maybe set a color. Let's do a random color, shall we? Maybe if I would do, yeah, this is what I have so far. Let's try to generate 20 random rectangles. There it is, 20 random rectangles all over this canvas. You can see the art starting to develop here. I did not draw this or anything. It is done. Crediting, I am going to credit the random generator, the map from the math class. Credit all of the work. I'm not sure about the code, so I take credit for the code, but I don't take credit for the randomness of this art. You can see it. So what I'll then do is maybe let's do a width. Let's try setting the width to 20 pixels. Whoops. I think it's... I actually don't know how to set the width of the line, but this one is, I know this one will just set the color. You know what? For now, let's generate a rainbow color. A rainbow color. So, what I'll do is create a template. And I'll do an RGB where the red color will be a random number. Whoops. $sign math.random, which generates, this method generates from 0 to 1 times 255. And I'll have to floor it. Like that, so to round it down. Which is oops, like from that like that, and now I have created this, but they're all in the same color, so this is not what I want here. So I am refreshing it, and every time it selects one color at a time, so I don't want that. I want to update I'm going to make us a helper function that generates a random number from 1 to 255, and to help clean up this code because this line here is becoming too long. So let's try a function. And return this guy here. Whoops. And I'll just do it here. Replace each with that. Right now, I'm trying to think, how can I change the rectangle every time I do it? And in the meantime, I'm going to put it here. I'm replacing these hard-coded values with that. Like so. In the meantime, I'm giving you some additional tingles with some mouth sounds while I try to figure it out why it's only generating the same color and not updating it. Maybe I will log it. Maybe I might log it here, but... Or maybe let's try logging a random color. Let's try making a random color here. Maybe let's do a random JSON color. Set to JSON object. And each time I'll call a random color. Red, green, blue. Like that. And I'll do, instead of doing that, I will do random color dot red. Dot blue here. And then dot green here. And no, nothing's updated. Or maybe they could update it after I stroke it. So that's not good. Okay. So I kinda changed the method to stroke rectangle. So that means it creates a rectangle that is on the outline where I generated a random color every time. So I'm not sure about the difference between stroke rectangle and rectangle, but I know that the stroke rectangle will kind of create a rectangle So maybe likewise I'll try fill rectangle, and it gives you a filled rectangle, and instead of that I'll do fill style, which instead generates filled in rectangles like that. And so I'll keep it like that for filled in rectangles. So this is what I have right now: a random picture that generates 10 random rectangles for now at this point. So to sum things up for part 1, I created a setup function that generates the width, height, and creates the context, and which generates a random rectangle right now. I'm gonna remove that because that was for testing, and I created a simple for loop that calls random rectangle. This guy here generates 10 random rectangles, and this function, all it does is create one random rectangle using 4 random values for the position and the size of the rectangle. It creates a random color with a random red, green, and blue via this function, which generates a random number from 1 to 255 rounded down. And I set the fill style to that color object, create that rectangle, and then log it. And that's the end result for now in part 1. So this will mark the end of part 1. Part 2 will be a continuation for this app right here. So I hope you do enjoy this video. If you did get your tingles, please drop a like down below and stay tuned for part 2 of this series where I create a random abstract art picture generator in this series. See you in part 2.